No, just stand there. Stand there.
One, two, three, four, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Thank you.
We demand climate justice. We are for climate justice. We seek for climate finance. And we are speaking as a community voice, speaking to the nation. Let them take effect now. I mean now. That's what we are saying.
See. No.
No, you can keep it like this. Keep it like this. Yeah. I need the background. I need all this. The background and the show. So we are saying that nothing. With speed, it should come to pass. Thank you.
Are we ready? Can we go? I think I will.
Please. Please.
Hello, we're just about to get started. Okay. Is this going to show something at any time? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. We will now get started. Apologies for the delay. I really appreciate you coming here. I know it wasn't easy to find this room, so congratulations, you have arrived. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon and welcome to this session entitled The Cow in the Room. Can Sustainable Livestock Production Deliver Climate Adaptation, Mitigation, and Food Security? My name is Laura Kramer. I'm the theme leader for Policies and Institutions for Climate Smart Agriculture in the Accelerating Impacts of Climate Change for CGIAR Climate Research for Africa program. I'm hosted in the Sustainable Livestock System Department of the International Livestock Research Institute. I'm delighted to be here today to moderate this session. And again, thanks for coming and thanks to anyone watching online through the live stream. We appreciate you being here as well. Today we have an impressive roster of panelists who will discuss the importance and reach, the challenges and the opportunities for more sustainable livestock systems. They'll share their thoughts on how sustainable livestock production can bring adaptation, mitigation, and economic growth to people and the planet, especially in developing countries, and how it can contribute to building climate resilience while boosting low-emission development and supporting food security and livelihoods. So before we jump into the panel session, I'm really honored that we are able to give the floor to Simeon Ewi, the Regional Director for Sustainable Development for Africa at the World Bank, for some opening remarks. Simeon, you have the floor.
Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you, Laura, and good afternoon again, everyone, and distinguished panel members. It's here in Sharm el-Sheikh to discuss the sustainable livestock production with you. The livestock sector is a pillar to the global food system and contributes to poverty reduction, food security, and broadly agricultural development. It plays a significant role in sustainable food systems. For example, manure is a critical source of natural fertilizer. At the same time, livestock used as draft animal can help boost productivity in regions where there is low mechanization. Livestock are essential assets for vulnerable communities. Globally, around 500 million pastoralists rely on livestock herding for food, income, and as a store of wealth, collateral, or safety net in times of need. Locally, livestock production system can contribute to preventing or preserving biodiversity and carbon sequestration in soil and biomass. In harsh environments, such as mountains and drylands, livestock is often the only way to sustain natural resources into food, fiber, work power for local communities. Increasing incomes, changing diets, and population growth have led to increased demand and made the livestock sector one of the fastest growing agricultural subsector in middle and low income countries. Livestock contributes 40% of the global value of output and supports the livelihood and food and nutrition security of almost 1.3 billion people. This represents a significant opportunity for smallholders, agribusiness, and job creators throughout the livestock supply chain. However, livestock is both part of the solution and also part of the problem. If not properly managed, this growth risks accentuating sustainability issues that span equity, environmental impact, and public health. The livestock sector emits some 7.1 gigaton of CO2 equivalent per year. This represents about 14.5% of human-induced greenhouse gas emissions. Increasing the efficiency of livestock supply chains is key to limiting the growth of greenhouse gas emissions in the future. There is broad scope to improve livestock sector practices to be more sustainable and equitable and pose less risk to animal and human health. The World Bank is committed to improving the livestock sector's contribution to sustainable development. Currently, the World Bank has US $1.9 billion in active investments in livestock. Requests for World Bank support for livestock operations have increased from an average of US $150 million in annual lending commitment at the beginning of the decade to about $700 million in new lending per year in the last 3 years. Most of the growth has been in Africa, South Asia, and Central Asia. The World Bank supports countries to manage and respond to the growing demand for animal protein in ways that are significantly less harmful to the environment and contribute significantly to less harmful to the environment and contributes less to the climate change. Improved livestock management is integral to the One Health approach, which seeks to optimize human, animal, and planetary health. As part of its commitment to helping countries build sustainable nutritious food systems, the World Bank is moving its livestock investment toward greater sustainability and climate-smart outcomes. All investments are designed with mitigation and adaptation in mind, and an average of 61% of livestock financing over the last 3 years is directly tied to climate co-benefits. Ongoing projects in Ethiopia and Bangladesh are anticipated to dedicate $108 million and $259 million to climate co-benefits. They promote climate-smart practices among farmers and processors, enhance greenhouse gas emission monitoring and reporting capacities, and address the issue of clean cooling technologies along the value chain. The World Bank is also committed to supporting countries in achieving their individual nationally determined contribution (NDCs) related to livestock, including through a new climate development instrument called the Country Climate Development Reports. Together with partners, the bank has prepared a new guide to investment in sustainable livestock with a vision toward improving the efficiency and reducing the environmental impact of livestock globally. How can new World Bank support a project like Accelerate the Impact of CGIAR Climate Research for Africa, ICRA, be game changers for sustainable livestock? In Kenya, ICRA supports implementing participatory rangeland management, PRM, which empowers pastoral communities to govern their communal rangeland more effectively. Access to improved livestock market information is another crucial component of sustainable livestock in Africa dryland. ICRA supports expanding and refining a mobile-based platform that connects pastoralists with real-time livestock market information along a critical livestock corridor across northern Kenya. It has created a One Health platform to provide better data on livestock practices in Ghana. Finally, we need to talk about the cow in the room. What do we mean by this? We need to make a more nuanced and balanced discussion about the diversity of livestock systems. There are very different contexts of livestock food systems worldwide, from tiny family farms to substantial industrial livestock production, from backyard pig and poultry operation to vast cattle feedlots, from Andean sheep to Maasai goats to Mongolian yak herders. This context gives rise to very different perspectives on how to transform animal husbandry for the good of all. The carbon footprint of most livestock-dependent communities in the developing world is far smaller than that of other counterparts elsewhere. It contributes very little. Sorry, I need to find my. It contributes very little to climate change, yet they and their animals suffer its harshest impact. Therefore, policymakers and producers must prioritize adaptation and food security in Africa. Mitigation in African livestock system should be framed as a core benefit transformation, and we need to recognize different needs in specific contexts. That said, in wealthy nations, consumption of animal source foods might reduce because of the excess, and plant-based alternatives expand as there are more opportunities. Let's recognize that the cow in Kansas is different from the cow in Kenya, and consider innovations and solutions toward the multiple pathways to sustainable, lower emission livestock systems. I look forward to the rich discussion. I want to thank you. It's been a pleasure for me to give this particular speech because it brings me back some 20 years ago in my career at the International Livestock Research Institute, where together with Chris Delgado, we wrote the book on livestock to 2020, the livestock revolution. And this reminds me of this effort that we did at that time, and the debate continues. So let me wish you the best in this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Simeon. One moment. Thank you so much. It's fantastic to have a livestock champion like Simeon in the World Bank, and it's excellent to hear the bank's commitment to supporting sustainable livestock production through investments in One Health and the other commitments that they're making. So thank you so much for that. And thank you also for highlighting our work on ICRA within Kenya and other countries, and we look forward to continued support on that. So I'd like to now introduce our panel today. I'm honored to be joined by such a distinguished panel. We have Mr. Bernard Kimoro, who is the head of the Climate Change and Livestock Sustainability section from the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development in Kenya. We have Mr. Carlos Felipe Torres, the Agricultural Follow Coordinator of the Agriculture Red MBA. We have Dereje Wakjira, the Director of the ICPALD Center for Pastoral Areas and Livestock Development. I'm not sure if I should speak louder or quieter. And then we have Ms. Melissa Ho, Senior Vice President for Freshwater and Food from WWF US. Sana Decker, a member of the Standing Committee on Environment of the International Dairy Federation. And Ms. Esther Zulu, a farmer from Zambia. So thank you all for being here. We do have, will it project? We had plans for you an interactive session today where you would get out your phones and enter a code to be able to vote in a Slido poll. We will see if that pulls up. What we will be asking you, you can think about it. I'll tell you the question as we get there. What we want to know from you is, in your opinion, what are the top 2 challenges to achieving sustainable livestock production in low and middle income countries? So think about those. We had some prepared categories to choose from. When those come up, see if that's what you've thought about in your head, or if you have thought about something else. And we'll try to get that up there. So in the meantime, what we had planned to do is to have the audience vote. So maybe you can be prepared if you open up your browser on your phone and go to slido.com. We'll give you a code. It is coming up right now. Fantastic work to the IT team. It's on the screen. You can use your camera to look at the QR code or type in the number 1779244. So that's at slido.com, and you should receive that question. In your opinion, what are the top 2 challenges to achieving sustainable livestock production in low and middle income countries? So you have a range of options there, and you can select the 2 that you think are most important, and we should start to see your responses as it comes up. And our viewers online watching the live stream can also participate in this. So go to slido.com and enter the code 1779244. And we are seeing some of the results come in. I think we've got 2 responses so far, so we'll give you some more time to go to your browser, slido.com, or take a photo of that QR code on the screen. We are getting more responses coming in. Don't be influenced by what you're seeing voted for most. Do your own voting and then look at the screen so that you're not biased against what's already coming up as top. And there is an option for other as well. It's not showing here on the screen, but you can select other. And when we get to some audience Q&A at the end, you can tell us what those other challenges might be that we haven't included here. So we're getting more responses coming in, and we're seeing there are 2 in the lead here, but it's changing as people enter. And so what we are going to ask the panelists as this comes through, and I'm glad that the panelists can also see the screen there, we're just going to ask you, what are your reactions to this? Does this track with your experience? Do you think that there is something else that we haven't mentioned here? Is it different in Kenya to in Zambia to in Colombia? So we want to hear from you, your experiences, and how you react to these results. So we see we have quite a number of answers now, so I want to now turn it over to our panel. And we'll start with you, Bernard, and then we'll go down the row. So Bernard, what are your reactions to these results?
Thank you very much. Very interesting results, I have to say the least. Of course, I expected that drought was going to be one of them. I'm not very sure that that is what is being projected, but interesting. For our perspective in Kenya, I think one of the greatest challenges is the issue of drought and the effect it actually brings. Drought brings with it the issue of seasonal feed availability. It affects the feed availability, and that has been a big problem for us. Currently, we are in a state where for the last 5 seasons, we've had no rains. And there's a possibility that this is going to continue for another season. So that means for 3 years, we're going to have areas without rainfall, especially in the pastoral areas. So for us, I think drought has been a serious issue. It's climate related. And this is actually impacting the aspect of feed availability. And obviously it has a ripple effect in terms of the livestock outcomes. Productivity then goes down. And the other thing that we're also seeing that the pastoralists especially have to move far and far. Smallholders have to have additional resources to be able to acquire feed resources. So this for me is the biggest issue that is evident in Kenya.
Carlos, Felipe, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon everyone. I would like to talk about the first pose option to challenges in the panel. And I think those first four is a consequence of the climatic change and variability change. In this way, I think that we have a big responsibility with the production of greenhouse gases emission, and we have a big opportunity to mitigation. And we don't have to forget the agriculture sector, policy sector, have a big opportunity in carbon sequester as a carbon sink. And I think that the result of this project is all about the variability and climatic change with no sustainable system for cattle, basically.
Thank you, Felipe. Dereje, let's come to you.
Thank you very much, Nora. My name is Dereje, as introduced. I'm working for the IGAR Center for Pastoral Areas and Livestock Development. Yes, we have challenge. I can mention the 2 critical challenges from my perspective as it stands, but it's also an opportunity. The first thing that as IGAD region, we have 70% of of our land as arid and semi-arid land. And it's highly affected by the impact of climate change. It's simply a big loss of land. Land are not losing as a physical asset, but losing the quality of land, because droughts are repeatedly happening, that grassland do not have time to recover and regenerate, and other opportunistic invasive wood species are inhabiting, which is affecting the livestock production because it affects feed availability. So one of the biggest challenges we have is the rapid speed of loss of land. I can just give you one example. In Ethiopia, in one particular region, 1 million hectare is invaded by prosopis species, which is an invasive species. It's not palatable, and it's pumping what's available in the ground. Has a lot of implications for the biodiversity and the livelihood of people. The second issue that I want to mention is also pastoralism and agro-pastoralism are the dominant livestock production in Horn of Africa. And two key issues define it. One is mobility. They have to move from season to season because the system does not allow permanent use. The second point is communal use of land. It's communal use of land with nested rights, and which is not really being appreciated and supported. It means a huge ecosystem is needed for the community to move seasonally and benefit. That lack of support and land governance has also served as disincentive for communities to invest to their land. These are the two challenges that we have, but solvable. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to answer this slightly different, off script. So, Melissa Ho, I support WWF freshwater and food work in the U.S., based in Washington, D.C., so we work globally. I think I just wanted to pull off of my colleagues, as well as on Simone's presentation, and really just say, working with livestock, especially in the climate context, there are a lot of paradoxes, right? It's part of the problem, part of the solution. We need to improve and reduce the footprint of livestock, but yet we need to upscale production of animal ag in many parts of the world for livelihoods, nutrition, and also things like, there's going to be why livestock is important for nutrition, but yet we also want to be shifting diet. So I think I wouldn't be WWF staff person if I didn't take a systems approach and maybe reject the notion of picking one or two top things. And as you heard from colleagues, they're very interrelated. And we have to take a systems approach to think of what is relevant where. But I will pick two themes that I'm going to build off of colleagues. The first is land use and land use change and land use regulation. So livestock and soil, often to feed livestock, are the two biggest drivers of conversion of land, deforestation and conversion. This is a huge footprint of livestock and the food system. It's the majority. These two commodities alone are the majority of the 22% contribution of land use change to the climate footprint globally. Also thinking about, as well as thinking of management of animals on the land, degradation is a key problem, and that affects water and soil management, etc. So really thinking about the existential places of where we are grazing and where we produce livestock, as well as how we manage them. The second biggest challenge, and a lot of other folks mentioned it, is on feed. I'd say animal feed and nutrition. There's a huge yield gap and efficiency gap, and really orders of magnitude differences in production efficiency in systems around the world. I appreciated Simone said, a cow in Kansas is not the same as a cow in Kenya, and what and how we manage that cow and the species and varieties and what we feed those animals should probably also be different. And so thinking of how to improve production efficiency and close the yield gap, that will also reduce the per capita, the intensity of the GHG footprint as well. And there's so many things to unpack about innovations in feed and feeding strategies. And just improving productivity, basic productivity will go a long way in the lower and middle income countries.
As an animal scientist on animal production systems, I must agree with all the previous speakers, and I don't want to repeat the same message again and again, but yes, the reason that, it's quite equally divided, the voting here, I think, is because the different issues are very much interconnected. I think especially in Southern Africa, drought has been an issue for a long time, but it's getting worse, and that's because of the greenhouse gas emissions. So to say land degradation, yes, of course, it connects to drought. Lack of access to water connects to drought. So it's all interconnected. And I think I'll leave it to that because we're repeating each other. And I'll hand over to my neighbor.
Thank you. I'm a farmer from the grassroots where we are experiencing these challenges. In my opinion, I see the lack of access to water is one of the challenges we are facing, like in Zambia. The other one is seasonal feed availability. Because in Zambia, our animals, they have got a gap in water. We don't have so many reservoirs where we are. So, for our animals to access water, it is becoming a challenge. And when we come to seasonal feed, sometimes we help the shepherds to go out with the animals, to go and feed the animals. But at a later stage, after rain season, we do leave the animals to feed on their own, which is bringing another problem in the fields of other farmers just because of those animals. And when they go out to feed on their own, they are again finding the program on this thing which has been introduced to apply weed killers for the grains in the fields. As the animals feed on their own, they are eating that grass which has been sprayed by those chemicals, which is bringing a problem to those animals, and they are dying. So as a result, these are the problems we are facing because of this. I think if we can have more land for the animals to graze in, this will help us as farmers, ensuring that farmers have access to good feed materials, locally produced, instead of expensive stock feeds, enduring emission per animal. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think what I take away from all of those responses is that we can't talk about livestock as a monolith. What is happening in Colombia is very different from what is happening in Zambia, from what is happening in the Netherlands, from what is happening in the Horn of Africa. And so this conversation around, what do we do about livestock? Livestock are contributing so much. We really have to nuance that. And I think we've also talked a lot about cattle here, but we have to remember there are other types of livestock as well. And so, the solutions will not be the same everywhere. And we have to be able to tailor the solutions to the different contexts. So, I think you're right, Melissa, I think Melissa said, we can't say what is the one problem here, because there are different problems everywhere and they are systemic and linked. So thank you so much for those responses. So we have a second question. So get your phone out again, and then we'll do another round of responses, and then or a round of answers here, and go to the panelists again. So our second question, now we're testing your trivia knowledge almost. What percent of total global greenhouse gas emissions come from livestock in Africa? So we're just talking about Africa and the livestock. What percent do you think of total global greenhouse gas emissions is coming from that sector? give it a thought. Don't be influenced by what you see coming up on screen. And just to note that we did start a little late, but to be able to respect the next session that will come in, we will plan to end at the scheduled time of 2:45. So after this round of responses, we will try to have a little Q&A with the audience, and then we'll have some closing remarks. So we will try to end, because I know I think our other panelists have elsewhere to be as well. So just to note that we will close on time there. Okay, so we're seeing the answers come up. I think we have some very educated people in the room, because the one that has come in top is the correct one. According to FAO's GLEAM dashboard, 1.2% of total greenhouse gas emissions come from the livestock sector in Africa. And to give you a comparison, this compares to 3.7% for livestock from the Americas, 4.8% for livestock from Asia, and 1.3% from Europe. So we go back to our panel now. Be prepared with your microphones. So we'll start again with Bernard. What are some of your thoughts when you think about this percentage?
It's not surprising again. We have low emission levels from Africa. The fact that it's only 1.2%, then tells us that our priority should actually be on adaptation, creating resilience amongst the communities. One thing we must realize that in our context, livestock is looked at not as one that is producing one specific commodity. In Africa, livestock has multiple uses, right? We're looking at livestock being a source of livelihood. We're looking at a source of nutrition within the household. We are looking at it as something that delivers ecosystem or biodiversity in the areas where they are. We're also looking at livestock as sourcing of important organic fertilizers, which are often very expensive out there. So this is a context that a lot of people don't understand about livestock in Africa. So we don't look at livestock in terms of emissions per kilogram of meat, for example, per kilogram of protein. But if you were to quantify the value of all those ecosystem services, then we realize that the actual emissions are even lower. Yeah? Therefore, our focus should ideally be on the aspect of looking at not really on mitigation, but adaptation. What can we bring on board to create resilience of this livestock? How do we improve the feed quality that will increase productivity in these areas, sustain the livestock of a longer period, and improve the livelihood of a sustained period? So that for me is what is critical. So it's not out of the world emissions are quite low in Africa. And sometimes I look at the animals that people are condemning in some of the areas and saying they are not producing. But which other animal can survive in those areas? We don't have crops that can actually do well in those particular areas. What is the option? And what is the social cost of removing all those animals to the people who live in those particular areas? So I think we really have to look at all this, like I've been saying, in terms of in totality, and look at the total value of livestock, rather than looking at a specific product. I hear people talking about livestock being industrial livestock systems. It's nothing like that. I mean, whether it's in America or wherever, livestock delivers certain services that we must look at directly. Thank you.
I will answer the last because I prepared a couple of slides.
Okay.
So,
okay. Sure. Yeah. So they'll come up now. So you can go ahead. Yes, we're ready for the slides. There we go.
Okay. For this question, I prepared a couple of slides about the contribution in a region view, and the next one is for a specific example and profile greenhouse gas inventory of my country, Colombia, or in the inventory team. So in this slide, we can see that, as all here in this room know about the pollution sector, we are apporting 22% of all greenhouse gases in a planetary scale as main three gases: CO2 from deforestation, methane for intensive fermentation and manure management, and rice crop. And the last one is nitrous oxide from fertilizer and urine and fecal nitrogen in grazing animal principally. But what can we see in this slide? You can push next for the animation. So we can see here the Apollo sector represent with the stars to the one before, please. With the table of the left side represent more than 2/3 for the inventory in a lot of countries in South America, such as Brazil, such as Colombia, such as Argentina. And the next table shows the other stars with intensive fermentation represents more than half of emission within the Apollo sector. So in this case, we have a big opportunity to mitigate this all cattle system view with a holistic view. So we have a big opportunity to increase this profile. Yeah. The next one slide, we can see with the next please. We can see to the left side profile of typical known Annex 1 with high areas of forestry. We can see that the first circle of the above circle, we can see that deforestation associated to pasture. Above that, we can see all emission from intensive fermentation. And 3 and 4 of above down in the graphic, we can see all emission from manure management from the cattle. So in this case, for Colombia, case of Colombia, we have maybe 40% of total emission just for cattle system. What it means, as you say, we have a very low productivity system in our countries, with high carbon footprints in emission for meat or for meat, and this is a typical profile emission factor from a pollution sector in a known Annex 1 countries, for the most countries in Africa and South America. And the right side in this slide, we can see that it's not just the cattle, the biggest or the key categories in manure management. In my country, if you can see the columns, yellow one and blue ones, we can see the emission from poultry, broilers and swines are important in methane and nitrous oxide for manure management. So we have a big opportunity to mitigate GSG in livestock for other species more than.
Thank you, Laura. I think Bernadette already said there is no way to again go back and confront this. The fact is, most of the research and extrapolation has been done outside Africa, and it's not really reflected the farming system. But we accept this is the issue. It's from our common village. We need to address it. the area that we could address? One of the issues we have is apart from productivity, it's a huge area that we can improve. We have a multiple impact in terms of improving production as well as also contributing to carbon sequestration through different investments. If there is a room that the available land, there is possible to enhance and improve. We need to work together toward this. And the other contribution is animal disease in the context of Africa, which is also taking assets in huge numbers. That we can do a bit around that. Especially the pastoralists and agro-pastoralists are also burdened with multiple tasks. They have to feed their family, they have to keep their asset as the assets. In case of capabilities of losing, they have to also keep the breeding. We could also do that, taking some of these areas, like for example, after loss of large population of livestock from drought, there is no area where they can go and restore by, because they have to struggle with breeding, feeding their family, keeping their assets. That financial service penetration is very poor. Providing breeding support is very poor, and same as feed. So a huge area that can be tapped in and pose another opportunity, supporting the people from lifting out of poverty, as well as also contributing to reduction of methane emission from livestock.
When I see the 1.2%, I think of what that represents today, but I also think of what and where we will be tomorrow and in 20, 50, 100 years from now. I think there's a lot of need to upscale animal production in low and middle income countries, as colleagues have noted, for all the benefits it brings to people, for livelihoods, for nutrition. In many places, it is the relevant livelihood opportunity in marginal soils where crop production is probably not appropriate. Pastoralism and livestock production is what is the option and the opportunity. So that 1.2% is today, but what will and should it be in the future? And so I think when you think of what and why it's 1.2% and where the population of livestock emissions comes from, it's the number of animals times the emission intensity, so the amount of footprint per animal produced. And so as others have noted, and I also mentioned in my opening remarks, that there is a big yield gap and a lot of opportunity to improve and close the yield gap, improve intensity of emissions per animal. As we know, in many of these countries, it's going to increase the number of animals. So we don't want that percentage to go up in lower and middle income countries, but we know we're going to increase the number of animals over time. So we must do sustainable intensification. We must improve productivity and reduce the footprint per unit animal. In other contexts, right, we probably might need to shift the number of animals. We have to do other means of improving production efficiency. That is also something. So, for instance, India has the most number of cows per capita, and there's huge gaps in their production efficiency. I think the last thing I'll just mention, and it's on this theme of looking at what we need to be thinking about in the environment and in the landscape versus what we need to be thinking about for the animal and the production system of the animal. They have to go together. And so we really need to think about a shared vision for people and planets. This 1.2% is just climate. We've talked a lot about climate and nature, and the landscape matters a lot, and that is not embedded in this 1.2%. So it's where do animals belong on a landscape in that region, in the world? What and how do animals support people for livelihoods and nutrition in those landscapes in a region around the world? And then how do we equitably determine what and how the footprint is, what's the equity of allocation of carbon emissions reductions that we know we need to have, right? We need to reduce emissions considerably, 70% in order to get to the 1.5 degrees. So there is an initiative called the Science-Based Targets Initiative, Forest, Land Use, and Agriculture. has actually, with the Global Earth Commission, calculated what emissions reductions where they should come from for the corporate sector by commodity, and by region. And so we need to also align in the climate space on what I call the North Star for what emissions reductions should look like in North America versus Africa and for specific commodities. And there's a whole set of science that is grounding that, and where corporates are making their commitments, especially where their supply chain depends on livestock products. So I really urge us to point to that as the North Star on the climate content. Thanks.
Yeah, if you look indeed, like Melissa already told us, at the total volume of GHG emissions per continent, you see that indeed in undeveloped countries, developing countries, those numbers are smaller than in developed countries. And if you look at the intensity, so the amount of CO2 per kilogram of product, it's the other way around. The footprint will be higher in developing countries than in developed countries. And that points out two things. First of all, the productivity difference. So developed countries have also developed agricultural, and that means that you need less resources per kilogram of product, which means your GHG emissions are going down. But it also points out, and that's very important, that there's a difference in access to nutrition. There's a big inequality between developed and developing countries. And that's really concerning, especially if you look towards the future, because you need finance to mitigate climate change, and you need finance to be resilient against climate change and to manage crisis. So unless we get this inequality a little bit more equal, this is very concerning, because we will not be able to reduce GHG emissions and to respond to climate crisis.
When I see the percentages, the issue is about trade-offs between adaptation, welfare for farmers, new animals, and all this. And at the same time, these animals cause methane and the GHG emissions. The emissions per unit animal are often high as cattle eat feed of low quality. If the feed improves, the emissions per animal will decrease as well. As we know, all the farmers, like in Africa, specifically in Zambia, farmers need livestock for income, food, nutrition, and farm implementation. Now, when we come to tell a farmer, a smallholder farmer, to reduce the number of animals because of emission, it is very difficult, because it means they would lose their livelihood. So what we just need to do is the effort should be to put farmers to make these animals more productive. Basic conditions for productive animals, production must be in place.
Thank you so much to everyone. And I think what I'm hearing is that, yes, we do need to think about the future and to look at where do we want to be, but we also need to think about the multiple benefits that livestock have and the income that they provide for farmers. So how can we make them more productive? And I think that I didn't hear the term co-benefits, but I was really thinking, if we work on improving the emissions intensities, we'll have adaptation and mitigation at the same time. And that's what farmers need, I think. So at this point, we do have time for audience questions. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. We will bring a microphone over. And we're interested also to hear from you. It doesn't have to be a question. You can give us a comment if you have thoughts on this topic. We all must be thinking the same way. No, there is a question. Thank you. Please introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Todd Crane from the International Livestock Research Institute, and I think it's noteworthy that all of the variables that we're looking at here today are environmental for sustainability, which is of course the foundation that we need to keep in mind. But when we also look at livestock systems, and I'm specifically looking at Africa here, both for live animals and for dairy, we also need to look at the economics, because environmental issues aside, the farm gate prices for livestock and for milk are very poor, very uninspiring, and they don't create incentives to actually invest in better practices. Because, say for example, in the Kenyan dairy sector, we know that investing in best practices earns you a loss financially. So there's a tension between the environmental side of sustainability and dealing with the economics, the household economics and the sectoral economics to consider in relation to these.
Thank you, Todd. I know, Bernard, you worked for a long time in a dairy development project. Do you want to respond to that?
Thank you very much. I think one of the things that sometimes we ask farmers is keep records in Kenya. But the case is that farmers don't keep records because they don't want to realize actually they make losses. It's a very common thing in Kenya. So I'm not surprised to hear that as we look at investments, especially in dairy, and especially if you're looking at climate smart investments, it is a cost. Already the cost of it is high, so we're telling the farmer to improve the quality of that feed even further. But the cost, the price of the milk when they're selling it does not match the investment that the farmer is putting in terms of the inputs. So there's a balance that has to be attained there, and I do agree that probably some of the prices are quite low in Kenya. We were in Ireland the other day, and animals are on grazing systems, pasture grazing systems. That's a very low-cost system. There's research which has been done comparing the three production systems, especially in dairy in Kenya. And the mixed, the semi-intensive and the pasture grazing is actually the cheapest, but we don't have the land. Only 20% of our land is actually arable. So there are a lot of issues that we have to look at in terms of that. I think investing in climate smart technologies and innovations can actually be costly, and that has to be matched with the price that the farmers have to get from the milk for them to continue practicing.
Isana, do you want to respond as well?
Yes, now it's working. What I can tell you about the company I'm working for in the Netherlands, Friesland Campina, we're sourcing a lot of milk in developing countries, and we have programs in place there to help farmers become more productive and enhance milk quality. So that's good for the company, that's good for the farmer. But what we've learned from that, because we've been doing that for years, is that it only works if you work on all steps of the chain. So it is about making sure that the milk gets to the milk collection centers, working on breeding, working on the feed quality, working on a good financial payment, and also just the safety in the region, the political situation. Because sometimes you build something somewhere and then it collapses again because there's unrest. So it's really important to work on everything at the same time, not to just run a project on breeding and bring some European cattle, breed them in and think then everything is fixed. It's really much more complicated than that. But we keep on trying, and I hope that everyone in the room actually will do the same.
Any other panelists that would like to respond to that question? Okay, from the audience, please go ahead.
Hello, thank you everyone. My name is Michelle Gorton and I'm the CEO of the Philanthropic Foundation in Australia, and we do a lot in agriculture and livestock particularly. I'm interested to know why the panel has emphasised the need to be very nuanced in the way that we look at the role of livestock around the world, and I completely agree. But there hasn't been a lot of nuance around the type of emissions. You know, there's been the type of emissions, the difference between methane from livestock and fossil fuel emissions. You know, in the mainstream, these things are increasingly conflated as being just as bad as each other. And I'm interested in your thoughts about how we can be a bit more nuanced about the differences between livestock's greenhouse gases and fossil fuel greenhouse gases and the environmental footprint.
Who would like to respond to that question? Melissa?
Can I clarify? Are you saying that you think it maybe is an unfair comparison, thinking of fossil fuel greenhouse gas emissions from livestock emissions method? Yeah, I mean, they're both a product of human consumption, right? You could argue they're both organic. I mean, fossil fuels are cut from earth, right? So I don't, it's hard. In WWF, we're very nuanced because we understand the role livestock play for livelihoods, nutrition, and agriculture for millennia. They've been part of agricultural systems and part of landscapes for millennia. I think what we have not seen is an industrialized and sort of level of production and the numbers that we have today in some parts of the world, right? And I think the extrapolation of the current trends we are on with consumption, we know that if we extrapolate that out to the 9-10 billion people that we have in the next few decades, eating at the same levels of consumption according to those trends, we need 7 planets to sustain us. So in some ways it doesn't matter, you know, what it is. It's really a product of our consumption, whether it's energy, our clothes, our food. We have to figure out how to curb our emissions.
The gases in the atmosphere are very different. One is a stock gas and one is a flow gas, and have very different, they exist in the atmosphere for different lengths of time, but we treat them all the same. And I think that is one of the reasons that livestock is so maligned, is because the two things are viewed in exactly the same way. There's an oversimplification of the role of those gases in the atmosphere.
I totally recognize that, and I think that the awareness of the difference between methane and CO2 is becoming more known, and that reducing methane emissions will have a short-term effect, whereas once you emit fossil CO2, you're hardly able to ever remove it from the atmosphere again. So that's a very important point indeed.
Yeah. Just add, really look at the Science-Based Targets Initiative, which is science-based and takes into account carbon accounting, translating methane as well as nitrous oxide. You know, and so I think the residence times as well as the impact of the different gases is taken into account in where the emissions reductions needs to come from. So I hear you that you feel, you know, it's different, but I do think the science-based protocols are understanding those differences.
Thank you so much. I saw 2 other hands, so let's take the questions one behind you, Reese. Let's take the questions one after the other, and then we'll have a quick response from the panel, and then we'll close.
Hello, my name is Ericksen, and I'm from Germany. As far as I understand, you are trying to develop a food system that is reliant on grazing. And at the same time, with the climate crisis growing more and more serious, the area which is available for grazing will become land. And you have mentioned you already have problems to provide water for the animals. And at the same time, you are saying you want to increase the number of animals. And another thing is, you have mentioned a cow in Colombia is different than a cow in Kenya or a cow in Europe. However, one thing all cows have in common is that growing them is highly inefficient. 90% of the calories that go into a cow get lost during the process of metabolism, and in the end only 10% of the former calories, they remain for human consumption. So I quite don't understand how this is a food system not already designed to fail. Why are we not trying to produce food in an efficient way, which is plant-based food? And for those areas where we cannot grow plants, we can make sure that the plants will be important, or they will be planted in areas where it's possible, and then we will bring them to the other areas. It's just like human collaboration. We've been talking about how the livestock farming needs to be like seasonal and go from one place to another, to another, to another, because it's not possible to do it all year at one place. So you're ready to move animals and cows, but it's not possible to move like plants from the places where they are grown to the places where they are needed. Like from my point of view, this food system relying on animals is designed to fail in the long term.
Thank you for those reflections. Let's have the one in the back, and then we'll go to the panel.
Hello, actually, I was going to ask the same thing, because somebody mentioned earlier that so plants are available all year round, so people have to eat animals, but I'm wondering what the animals eat. And then if we have the resources, because like raising animals surely takes lots of resources, and it also pollutes, not just with greenhouse gases, but like so I'm not quite sure logically. I'm wondering how you can. Water is so precious. Why would you waste it on raising animals when like humans need it? And shouldn't we be focusing on plant farming? Because we're in a methane emergency, and even if we stop fossil fuels right now, animal agriculture is gonna, it's 31.5 degrees right now. So are there any plans of like getting rid of animal agriculture altogether? Thank you.
Thank you for those. Thank you. Hello. Thank you for those comments. So I think we have some great discussion that can come out of this. And I have been asked to, or said that we could go until 2:55, which is great. Is that okay for the closing speaker? Thank you very much. I've been told that catering is here, so after this panel, we will be able to have a little bit to eat. So Felipe wants to respond, and then I think maybe Dereje, if you could talk. Thanks.
Okay, thank you for the first one question. For the first one. Okay, for the now better. Okay. For the first one question, I think the answer is no, increase the heads of animals in the system. I think that the answer is improve the all livestock production. Yeah. In this case, for example, in Colombia, we have 29 million heads in 39 million hectares. Is less than one animal per hectare. Yeah, but we have no high productivity system. We have very low rates in reproductive and productive system. So I think if we improve all livestock system, we are making a big difference in greenhouse gases inventory, for example. And the other side, I think that we have to see beyond the animal. We must to see a holistic view, animal and the relationship with the plants, grazing, soil, silvopastoral system, and I think if we have a good balance in those livestock systems, I think the carbon footprint is increasing.
I have not heard the second question, the second one. I can respond to the first one. I mean, in the context where we are, we have to attempt a range of actions to survive our humanity. That's the underlying fact. But we have to also see the difference in different localities when we are suggesting a proposal. You have an ecosystem where livestock has been part of the system, and then people have no other option. It's food, it's assets, it's job. So it's so simplistic to suggest something because it's part of those people, and those people will be affected. That's what I want to say. We have to also see livestock and with the land. And in a mixed farming system, livestock provide power, livestock provide manure. It's not only the line of the methane that we see, a lot of interconnected stuff. So yes, solutions are multiple. It's ranging from in to in. There is nothing that we can say no as humanity to survive, but we have to see also the different in different localities.
You can hear me? One thing I want to say is when you talk about efficiency has to be context specific. And that's why I say in Africa, efficiency has to look at the totality of livestock, not just a product. Okay, so for us, when we talk about efficiency, look at the contribution of livestock to the biodiversity, to the food, their wealth, that is their wealth, the draft power that we're talking about. The other thing is also realize that the droughts that have actually become more recurrent have resulted to 20 to 60% loss of livestock in some of these areas. So the numbers are actually not increasing, they're actually decreasing. And we are aware of that fact. And some of the interventions we are doing is to actually look at what are the best options of increasing productivity, whether it is improving the grazing management or improving the sustainable land management in those particular areas, right? And then finally, I also want to talk about water. Livestock is the most efficient in terms of water use. Livestock uses what you call the green water, not blue water, in Africa. We don't do a lot of irrigation to plant fodder crops, okay? 86% of the inputs to livestock, especially the feeds, are not usable by human beings. Okay, so we must look at livestock as both an adaptation and resilience in terms of upcycling what we have, which we cannot be able to use to make a useful product that we are actually consuming. So, I mean, it has to be looked at it in totality, it's context specific. In other regions, we're talking about efficiency in terms of how many kilograms of proteins, but in other maybe African region and LMIC, it could be something different. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really welcome this dialogue. I think we need more of this kind of calm and just really diplomatic, but we want to get into it. We want to understand where other people are coming from. We want to know where you're coming from. I live in Kenya. I have been to these dry areas that get, I think some areas get maybe 200 millimeters of rain a year. It's so little. And there are shrubs there are grasses there that can survive in that weather, and then there are animals that can survive in that weather. And so for sure, we're not saying that everyone everywhere should continue eating the level of meat or consuming the level of animal source foods that they are, because we do understand things are context specific. And yes, there are places where people should be reducing their consumption of animal source foods. We don't want to encourage everyone to always be increasing, but there are areas in Africa that children are suffering malnutrition, and a little bit of milk or an egg a day can really make a difference to a young child's earning potential later in life or just their health. And so we really want to understand kind of what's going on and what's the best for people and the planet. So thank you all. I really appreciated this and thank you for coming. So I want to first make an announcement. We're very happy that the One CGIAR Livestock and Climate Initiative has been selected as an Aim for Climate sprint. And I think you'll be hearing more about that as at another event starting, I'm not sure when, I think this afternoon. And so we're really excited that that will bring some attention to the work that we're doing around sustainable livestock and climate. And now it's my honor to, I'm sorry, I have to say thank you to the panelists for your insights. It has been really great to have all of you up here, so thank you so much. So now I want to ask Juan Lucas Restrepo, who is the Global Director for Partnerships and Advocacy at One CGIAR and the Director General of the Alliance of Biodiversity in CIAT, to come up and give us our closing remarks. Juan Lucas.
Thank you, Laura. This is a very long title that took a long time to pronounce. I'm really pleased to be here representing One CGIAR and our CGIAR Alliance in this great discussion. And I really enjoyed listening to the panelists, but also to the great questions that tell us that there is still a divide, there is a gap in terms of understanding, and probably will never fully bridge it, because there is philosophies, ways of seeing life, etc., that of course we need to acknowledge and respect. But starting with what Simeon said, we need to start from the people side of things. And he was very clear in mentioning how many millions, we were saying 500 million people, mainly poor people, we're talking about mainly poor people, we're talking about livelihoods, depend on some way of animal production directly on the farm, on the field, on the different rangelands. So that's important. And then if you go and connect that through the whole value chain, it's accounting for more than 1 billion people connected to this. So it's not only the cow in the room, it's the cow in relationship to the surroundings, environment, soils, water, etc. But the connection to people and to livelihoods is critical. A world without cattle would mean that we need livelihood solutions for a big segment of society, and this is very important to be taken into account. The second element we heard is that is also critical is diversity. We tend to homogenize and simplify the discussion about this subject. And we heard that this is context specific. I will also say cultural specific. It depends on the on the ecosystems, what is there available. It's very difficult to tackle a livestock challenge in a dry area to what it is in a humid savanna, as an example. And so those challenges we saw, well, that would not be great statistics. First, because the number of respondents was very small, but because representing that wide array of diversity is very, very complex. However, we also listen, and Melissa said that it's not one challenge. This is a very complex system that we need to address from all its dimensions, not from a specific one, and assess the trade-offs and see how we really manage to balance things. I think we didn't hear enough, maybe indirectly, about how animal handling, management, cattle farming is knowledge intensive. It's very complex. So we may think that a silvopastoral, beautiful silvopastoral system in the hands of a small producer in the Caribbean coast of Colombia is fantastic, but that requires huge management skills, because if you don't do things right, and the rotation and the management of the trees and the it's so complex that if we don't work on the producer, on his knowledge, on his skills, etc., those systems end up being degraded and the investment is lost. So this is all knowledge intensive, and the solution in many ways needs to be sustainable intensification. We need to make sure that hopefully with less land, that's a challenge across the world, that livestock does not need as much land as it currently has, but we can still see in a sustainable manner more heads of cattle and other animals occupying those territories. And this is done through management practices, through feeding, through breeding, through accelerating. How many cycles, reproductive cycles, do you have in a specific place, a plot of land? Because the faster those cycles are, the lower the effect in terms of climate, greenhouse gases, etc., is per kilogram or whatever unit output you want to call. So maybe to finalize, two things or three things. Knowledge is critical, and that means that needs to be able to bring new elements into the systems. And we have been talking these days about how the Brachiaria unidicola, that's great for certain environments, inhibits nitrification partially on the soils, meaning less nitrous oxide emissions. That, as we saw, is a very damaging gas. So bringing new knowledge, new technology is going to be absolutely critical. Then, of course, second thing, there are important trade-offs, and we have the current case in Colombia. You mentioned 39 million hectares